What if I told you that saving $5,000 a year doesn't require a budget app, a side hustle, or even a steady paycheck? For artists who live paychecks to paycheck, the idea of saving money feels impossible. But what if you could do it by just being more mindful of the little things? Let me show you how. We've been taught that saving money is about strict budgets, cutting corners, and making sacrifices. But that's not the only way. In fact, for many creative professionals, the traditional methods of saving just don't fit. You're not working 9 to 5, you're not earning a predictable income, and you're constantly investing in your craft. So how do you build financial stability without the usual tools? The answer might be simpler than you think. It starts with a shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on what you can't afford, focus on what you can do differently. It's not about deprivation, it's about intentionality. It's about understanding the small, everyday choices that add up over time. And it's about learning to see your money not as a finite resource, but as a living, breathing part of your life. Think about it. Every time you buy a cup of coffee, skip a meal, or buy a new piece of software, you're making a decision that affects your financial future. But what if you started making those decisions with more awareness? What if you began to see each purchase not as a transaction, but as a statement about your values, your priorities, and your long-term goals? This isn't about living a minimalist life or becoming a financial expert overnight. It's about developing a deeper relationship with your money, one that's rooted in mindfulness, curiosity, and a little bit of play. Because when you start to see your spending habits not as flaws, but as opportunities, you open the door to a whole new way of thinking about money, creativity, and freedom. Let's start with the basics. How do you save money when your income is unpredictable? It's not about tracking every single dollar, but about making smarter choices. Think of your spending like a sketch. Sometimes messy, but with the right tools, you can turn it into something solid. Wait until you hear how I cut my monthly coffee habit in half without even noticing. Here's the thing. When your income is irregular, trying to stick to a strict budget can feel like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. You're chasing numbers that don't always add up, and that can be frustrating, even discouraging. But what if you shifted your focus from control to awareness? Instead of trying spending, what if you simply started paying more attention to it? I used to drink coffee every single day. It wasn't a huge expense, but it was constant. And over time, it added up. One day, I decided to be more mindful of when and why I was buying coffee. I started asking myself a few simple questions. Was I buying it out of habit or because I actually needed it? Was I rushing through it or was I saving? And most importantly, was I getting real value from it? What I discovered was that a lot of my coffee purchases were impulsive. I'd grab a cup on my way to work or I'd buy one just because I felt like it. But when I started noticing these patterns, I began to make different choices. I started brewing my own coffee at home, and I started carrying a reusable cup with me everywhere. And without even trying, I cut my coffee spending in half. It wasn't about giving up something I loved. It was about understanding what I was really spending on. And once I had that clarity, I was able to make choices that aligned with my values, my goals, and my financial reality. And that's the power of mindfulness when it comes to money. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be intentional. Here's where it gets wild. I didn't just cut costs. I found ways to make money while I was at it, like turning old art supplies into cash or using my creative skills to barter for services. But here's the real kicker. I didn't need who I am as an artist to do it. In fact, it made me more productive and less stressed. You see, the key wasn't about becoming a different person or forcing myself into a mold that didn't fit. It was about finding ways to align my creativity with my financial goals. I started thinking about my work not just as art, but as value. And once I saw it that way, the possibilities opened up. I began selling pieces I no longer needed. Old sketches, unused canvases, or even leftover materials. It wasn't about clearing out my studio. It was about recognizing the worth of what I already had. And it wasn't just about cash. I started trading my skills for things I needed, like website design for a local business in exchange for a few hours of their marketing help. It was a win-win, and it didn't feel like a compromise. The more I did this, the more I realized that creativity and money don't have to be at odds. The more I did this, the more I realized that creativity and money don't have to be at odds. In fact, they can work together in ways that feel natural, even intuitive. I stopped seeing money as something I had to chase or sacrifice for. Instead, I saw it as something that could flow through my work, my choices, and my daily life. And the best part? I didn't have to give up anything I loved. I didn't have to stop creating or stop being myself. I just had to be a little more aware of the value I was bringing and how I could let that value work for me. It wasn't a quick fix or a magic solution, but it was a shift in mindset, one that made everything feel more balanced, more intentional, and more aligned with who I am. Saving $5,000 a year doesn't mean giving up your passion or your lifestyle. It means being intentional with what you spend and how you earn. Here's why this changes everything. It shows that financial freedom isn't about having more money. It's about having more control. When you start thinking of money not as a burden, but as a tool that you can shape and guide, everything shifts. You stop seeing it as something that controls you, and instead, you see it as something you can use to support your dreams, your creativity, and your life on your own terms. That's the real power of financial intentionality. It doesn't take away from who you are. It enhances it. This approach isn't about being frugal for the sake of it. It's about making choices that reflect your values, your goals, and your vision for the future. It's about creating a life that feels rich, not just in money, but in meaning and purpose and in possibility. And when you do that, you start to see that saving money isn't about sacrifice. It's about liberation. You don't have to live a minimalist life to be financially stable. You don't have to live a minimalist life to be financially stable. You don't have to stop creating, stop dreaming, or stop living the life you love. What you do have to do is start seeing your money as something that can work for you, not against you. And once you do that, you realize that financial freedom isn't about having more. It's about having more control over how you live, how you create, and how you grow. So the next time you're tempted to think that saving money is impossible, or that it requires giving up something important, remember this. It's not about what you can't afford. It's about what you can choose to do differently. And that choice, right there, is where real freedom begins. If you're an artist who's ever felt like saving money is a lost cause, I want to hear from you. Drop your biggest money waster in the comments below. And if you found this helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep building a life where creativity and cash flow go hand in hand. Money and creativity don't have to be at odds. In fact, when you start seeing them as partners instead of rivals, everything changes. You stop fighting against the system and start working with it. You stop feeling like you have to choose between your art and your finances. And you start realizing that the two can actually support each other in ways you never imagined. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. Someone who can create without fear, who can dream without limits, and who can build a life that feels rich in every way that matters. And that starts with understanding how money works, not just for the saving, but for the sake of freedom. So let's keep this conversation going. What are you spending money on that you could be spending on your art? What habits are holding you back from creating the life you want? I'm here to help you see the possibilities, not just the limitations. Because when you start to see money not as a barrier, but as a tool, you open up a whole new world of creative potential. Let's keep building this together. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep turning creativity into cash flow on your terms.